Our FedEx guy came, so you're gonna hear my dog now because he's gonna protect the entire house from the scary FedEx person. Probably with another book. Book math off to a great start in April. Hey friends, it's Kelsey, this is Essentially Book, and it is officially time for March's book math. I always think I'm doing so good, and then I look at like how much has actually come into my house and just kind of laugh. All right, so this is present day Kelsey. I was editing and realized that I did not even really go through the math of book math and what book math is. So book math is essentially me trying to be more mindful about the number of books I bring into my home. And it is me taking the number of books I've read, subtracting how many I've acquired in the hopes that that number is positive and not negative. I'm tracking both my NetGalley books and my physical books. So the goal is eventually to have a positive month, but it's been negative. I've definitely acquired more than I've read. So just a mindful way to do some math and to keep the books in my house attainable. So to be fair, we went on vacation and I did buy some books for like a bookstore. A lot of these books though are from publishers and then book of the month and book subscriptions. So 3 books came from book of the month and a book subscription that I'm a part of. The rest are from publishers. I guess theoretically I have one other book that I need to grab. It's not theoretic. Okay, let's do this now. All right, so I brought in 13 physical books to my bookshelf. So we're not even gonna touch physical books this month, which is great, but do what you can. Okay, so 13 books. First I'll start, I guess, with the one that I did get off my bookshelf, like in and out, so it netted 0. But funny story, Emily Henry, this is an ARC. My friend brought it over for me. I'm gonna now pass it on to another friend. I liked this, very typical Emily Henry. One of my more favorite ones. I loved Beach Read, then probably People We Meet on Vacation, then this maybe. And then Happy Place. I need to reread Happy Place. I think that that's one of the things I do need to do. And then Book Lovers is probably my least favorite, but I like them all, so I don't know. Not really gonna go review other books because we have so many to talk about. Okay, then my book of the month books that I got this month was A Fate Inked in Blood, which I should be reading in April because it's actually the Realm of Creations book club pick for the Aurelium summer or spring equinox that Book Roast hosts. So I'm really hoping to get this. I'm actually gonna move this over to my TBR cart. Pop it right there. Okay, and then I got Shark Heart as my free book of the year book. So I guess I didn't buy this, so that's kind of cool. But I've heard nothing but good things about this. I know I will love it. And then my other book subscription is, okay. Anita Del Monte Laughs Last by Xochitl Gonzalez, and I loved Olga Dies Dreaming, so I've heard nothing but good things about this. One of my really good friends gave this like 5 stars and hasn't stopped talking about it. She works for a bookstore and she posted her copy of this because she read it in advance, but it was like the copy they'd gotten and there was this Reese's Book Club sticker, so she got her hand slapped by Flatiron Books because she wasn't supposed to post before the pub date because of the sticker, which is a spoiler for what the Reese's Book Club was. So I thought that was really funny. Really, really looking forward to this. This is about like art, women of color, and then how you get gaslit by men, which is like things I like to read about. Those are my subscription ones. And then we did go on vacation, and so I was able to buy a few books, and technically one is my husband. So I'm obsessed with the Great Lakes. I've looked at this a few different times at different places and finally just decided to buy it. But this is The Death and Life of the Great Lakes by Dan Egan. It was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize. I have a video series I'm toying with adjacent to this book, so decided to just buy it because I've been wanting to read it and I love anything about the Great Lakes. And then my husband grabbed Gleanings, Stories from the Art of Scythe. Maybe it doesn't necessarily belong, but it does because I do hope to read this series someday. I actually have Scythe on my TBR cart as one to get to, so this does count for my bookshelf. And then another book I got is Democracy Awakening, Notes on the State of America by Heather Cox Richardson. She's a historian that I really love and respect. And during the pandemic, I think she started this like Substack newsletter where she talked just about the news and did more of like a historical lens of the news. And I just really love her style of research, the things she writes about, her voice, her tone. She's more hopeful. I don't know. She gives a really good look at like current events that I think is really balanced and isn't like Fox News-esque, which is important to me. So Democracy Awakening by Heather Cox Richardson. And then as far as books I got from publishers, this was a pretty wild month, honestly. Some I requested, some I did not. From Avon this month, which is a publisher I do really love, and I read these generally pretty quick. So I got The Funeral Ladies of Ellery County. I have this on NetGalley too, and I started reading it and like was laughing out loud. It starts out with like older women in a Midwestern town in Wisconsin. If you've belonged to a church, maybe this is a Midwest thing, but I think this is like all churches, there's like a funeral ministry. So when someone passes away, or like at my church, we have it just as like the meal train ministry. People bring meals to people, and it's about like older ladies with their crock pots bringing meals together. And it just starts off with like very small town church gossip. And like if you've grown up in that environment, it just seems really, really funny. So I am obsessed. It also takes place in Wisconsin, Midwest love here. I think it's got some like Great Lakes-esque setting. I'm actually pretty pumped about that. I have started it. Susan Elizabeth Phillips, Simply the Best. A joke, I guess. One of my like all-time favorite books, but not because it's actually any good, is Nobody's Baby But Mine by Susan Elizabeth Phillips. I read it during 2020, like March of 2020, and it is the most problematic romance novel, but it is hilarious. And I like laughed out loud throughout the whole thing. Like trigger warnings, questionable consent are things that happen in that book, but it was just such a product of its time and hysterical. It is very problematic, so I will disclaim that, but I thought it was hysterically funny in a this didn't age well sense. This is in the same universe as Nobody's Baby But Mine, but a much more like recently published book, and takes place in the Chicago Stars. So I couldn't not request it. Like, you guys, my love for Nobody's Baby But Mine is so big that like friends, when they're at used bookstores, will buy me copies. Right now I only have 3 copies. I got rid of a few because I had like duplicates, but yeah, like that's my love for that ridiculous book. Okay, and then this one, little shocked I got it. I'm not mad about it. Masters of the Air, which is now a mini series on Apple TV. Just a chonker. I have no intention of getting to this anytime soon, but I should probably do a post about it. And then The Painter's Daughter is one I also got on on NetGalley, but this is also blurred by Hilary Mantel, which is an author. I've read some of her shorter works. I have the first 2 books of her Wolf Hall trilogy, but this is by Emily Howes, and it's about art and sisters, the daughters of renowned painter Thomas Gainsborough, who struggle to live up to the perfect image the world has so admired in their portraits. Again, this one, I have another concept of a reading vlog I want to do at some point with my unread shelf that would include this book theoretically. Just need to find the time to read. That'd be cool. And then Habitations, this came from, I believe, Simon & Schuster. I know very little about this, but it is a young academic moves from India to the United States, where she navigates first love, a green card marriage, single motherhood, and more in this delightful novel written with immediacy, warmth, and wry humor. I found like I've liked these immigrant stories where they wrestle with like what it means to be an American and to be whoever they are from their native country. But yeah, I think this came out March 19th, maybe. I did not have the best reading month, so there's that. And then finally, a book I'm really excited about that I got, and this has been on my TBR for quite a while, is The Many Lives of Mama Love by Laura Love Hardin. She wrote The Sun Does Shine, and she's a ghostwriter, essentially. So she herself has a very illicit past, like drug use. She was a mom. She ended up going to jail for it. And part of her like healing is she became a writer, and now she's like a beloved writer for ghostwriting. It's like The Sun Does Shine and stuff. So I've heard nothing but fantastic things about this. This is also an Oprah's Book Club pick, and it was a Book of the Month book too. So pretty excited. So that was all the books I got physically. Let's look at NetGalleys. All right, my NetGalleys, I'm doing a way better job of. So I only downloaded 4 NetGalleys, and 2 of the 4 were ones I'd requested from publishers a long time ago, and it just took them that long to approve. One of them is The Undermining of Twyla and Frank, which is one of my most anticipated books of the year, and so that will get read. I'm very excited about that. So 4 NetGalleys, you guys. I netted 0 on something in March. Book math win. I read 10 books in March. Not my best. I read 4 books off my NetGalley shelf, and I acquired 4 books. So I am a 0 there. So my book math is actually going to be, I think, under 10, maybe. Because then I read 1, 2, 3, 4 books. 4 books physically that were already on my shelf, plus Emily Henry, so I did 5 technically. Okay. I mean, really 10 books. It wasn't my best reading month, but it was a good reading month. So I read 3 books for a vlog, or 2 books were for a vlog that I did, Listen for the Lie and The Haunting of Velkwood, which were for a reading new release book vlog. And that also included, I read Guilt Trip too, which is a romance, but that was physical. So Listen for the Lie is a true crime podcast book. I gave this 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I had so much fun reading it. Probably one of the more fun reading experiences I had this month. And then also The Haunting of Velkwood. Again, I talked about these in the video that I linked above, so I'm not really going to go into detail with that. I gave that 3 stars. That was an okay ghost story. It was clever, but it just fell apart in a lot of places that it was hard for me to like really buy it. And then for book club, one of my book clubs, I read Rules of Civility by Amor Towles. I actually gave this 4 stars, but I did really, really love it. He has a new book coming out, and I actually got it as one of my book of the months because I do love Amor Towles. Gentleman in Moscow is one of my most favorite books of all time. He just writes really well plotted and thought out characters. They're quieter novels, but he writes women. It's incredible. He's so good at it. But he's definitely an auto read author for me. And we had a really great book club discussion with that. Guilt Trip was a romance that I read. It was also in that vlog. I gave that 4 stars. That was a really, really fun romance. And then I got swept into the Dramedy fan fiction world because of one of my friends, and she wouldn't shut up about it. So then I was like, okay. So I read Draco Malfoy and the Mortifying Ordeal of Being in Love, and this is fan fiction. I gave it 3 stars. It was super fun. It was super long. I read it on our trip, but basically Draco and Hermione fall in love. She is now a healer and a scientist and is studying essentially like something to combat cancer and cancer, and then by extension it could help solve like being a werewolf and that blood disorder, and people don't like that. So Draco is an Auror and he has to protect her, and they fall in love. It was spicy, but like a lot of it was like more his internal thoughts were spicy, but then what actually happened with them was it was open door, but it was pretty closed door for being open door if you read a lot of romance. But it was super fun. I'm really glad I read it. I don't know if I'm up to like Manacled level because that seems really dark and I just don't have time for that, or I'm in the mood for a dark fantasy romance. So we'll see if I continue on in this fantasy fan fiction universe. I read Real Americans by Rachel Khong, and I gave this 4 stars. I'm actually gonna bump it up to 5 because that's how much I loved it. And this is about multiple generations. So it follows a mom, a son, and then the grandmother, and kind of how their stories weave together. Lily is like Y2K. She falls in love with this man, Matthew. They end up having a son, Nathan. And then at the time, Lily is estranged from her mom. Her mom's just kind of bizarre and intense, and she doesn't understand why. And you jump in time. So first it goes Lily and Y2K, then you come to present time for Nathan's story. And then you bounce back to like communist China, I want to say in the 60s maybe, for the mom. And then you see how we get to where we are. It was incredible, you guys. Like I'm still thinking about it. One of my favorite books of the year so far. And then like I said, Emily Henry, it was fine. I gave that 4 stars. So I read Things We Do in the Dark by Jennifer Hillier. This was, I think, the one book of the month I got off my shelf this month. I actually like shockingly enjoyed this for a thriller, and how everything kind of came together was really clever and fast-paced. I really couldn't put it down. Paris Peralta is arrested in her own bathroom covered in blood, holding a straight razor. Her celebrity husband dead in the bathtub behind her. She knows she'll be charged with murder. And you kind of look into her past and then another woman's past, and you see how they collide. Really good look at like childhood trauma. There's a little bit of a foster care perspective in there. This was really gritty and lots of triggers galore. Very interesting. There was one plot point that I kind of was like, I wish there would have been a little more resolve in it. I will read more Jennifer Hillier. I really did like this. It was great for a thriller, and you know I'm not a big thriller person. They're really hard sells for me. This was a lot of fun. And then I read Chain Gang All-Stars. This actually took me like a month and a half to read because it is such a heavy book, but it's so beautiful. If you're gonna do it on audio. It's like amazing. This is about a chain gang. So this takes place in the near future, distant future. Is a little dystopian, but the whole book is a commentary on our prison system in the United States and the like commodification of prisons, the capitalization of prisons, and how like it's not humane. This specifically, they have televised and like made prisons into this entertainment venue in which prisoners in the chain gang, if they elect to be in this chain gang, they fight to their death in like a gladiator style arena, and the winner, if you win in so many fights, you become free. A lot of people don't become free, imagine that. But this it follows like the prisoners themselves, media who reports on it, people who are protesting it, corporation that runs it. And there's lots of little footnotes that will reference like current US codes. I did check, verify that some of them are still relevant, and little footnotes, but the audio of this is expertly produced. Fully recommend it. I gave this 4 stars because it did take me so long to read, and there were a few parts that I just didn't love how things were tied together. So that was why I gave it 4 stars. And then the final book I read was also for a book club, and it's The Secret Book of Flora Lee by Patty Callahan Henry. This was a NetGalley book. I gave it 3 stars. I'm actually really sad I only gave it 3 stars because if you know from like favorite books of all time video, Patty Callahan Henry wrote Once Upon a Wardrobe, which is one of my favorite books of all time. This is about back in World War II, there was Project Pied Piper when the Blitz was happening in London, and the government strongly encouraged families with children to send their children to the countryside. There was no regulation, and so these children went to the countryside and were just picked by other families to go live with them. There was no like system for tracking, so you could be picked to literally be like a farmhand, or you could be added to like a loving family. These sisters were in a loving family, but like some of their friends weren't. And so they go when they're young, and the youngest sister ends up falling into the river and being lost forever. And the oldest sister, Hazel, is just like, well, I don't think that she's actually dead. Just like her intuition. But when they were children, they had this story, this fairy tale that they told each other, and only they knew it. Fast forward to like the 60s, and Hazel works in a rare bookshop, and a book shows up in their bookstore with that story. And Hazel's like, okay, my sister's alive. No one could have possibly known. This book sends you on a lot of different like paths to, and like kind of confuses you. There's lots of red herrings, all this stuff. But how it ultimately resolved, I just thought was really weak. Like it felt like a cop-out, how everything tied together. And it tied up with a very, very clean bow. And I think it needed a little more grittiness for it to really seem real. It has that Patty Callahan writing and sweetness, but there was just something about it that didn't do it for me, and that made me very sad. Okay, so book math was 12 books physically, and I read 4 books off my shelf, so 8. And then, so NetGalley books I acquired 4 this month, and I read 4, so 0. So book math is -8. That's pretty good. We will see. Hopefully I like am under -100. That'd be cool by the end. But okay, -8. That's a great number. So thank you so much for watching this month's edition of Book Math. And until the next one, hopefully I don't acquire more than I can read. But, you know, we'll see. It hasn't been looking good for me the past 3 months. So March's Book Math is complete. And until the next video, everybody, bye.